Athan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So I've listened to a couple of your other interviews. You've done a few, but I don't think any of them have actually asked you where you grew up and what your upbringing was like. And that's a question I love to start with. So
they always want to talk about suitcases. They never want to talk about me.
Yeah.
my upbringing's relatively simple. I wouldn't call it basic, but I'm Melbourne born and bred. So I've been here for most of my life, and I grew up in a Greek family. I'm Greek background. My parents are first generation, so it's been a fun learning curve, and they're actually quite progressive in that sense. So it's been fun growing up with them, and we still hang out quite a bit with my folks and my family. We train in the gym every morning.
Awesome.
Which is pretty good. I think they're pretty young. So actually, my dad's 100 times fitter than me, which is a bit embarrassing as well. So I've grown up in Melbourne, and I've done a few different things in that time.
Yep.
But the majority of it has just been around starting businesses and trying out new things.
Yep.
I guess that's been the main gist.
Were your folks entrepreneurs as well? Or was that where you got it from? Or
yeah, they are, but I don't know if that's where I got it from.
Okay.
Well, maybe I did. I think what my folks have set me up for is just not being so risk averse. I think there's an openness to risk in the family. My dad was actually both my parents are insurance brokers.
Interesting.
So my dad sort of landed into it. Actually, we were talking about this the other night because I've got family in town, and we were discussing what he used to do when I was born, because I've just got a child of my own now. And he was working insurance during the day, and then decided to open a Greek restaurant at night, which I thought was pretty funny. I didn't really know this part. Yeah. I didn't really know this part about him. So because he hated insurance and always wanted to open up a Greek restaurant. 6 months into it, he realized this was not for him, and cut the restaurant out completely, and then went to focus on insurance. He went from working for somebody to then opening or starting his own brokerage.
Awesome.
Did that for a long time. He was one of the first few businesses on Smith Street. So back in the day, Smith Street we're talking somewhere 25 years ago, was a rough spot. I actually quite remember it a little bit. So I don't know if you know where that organic groceries is on Smith Street.
Yeah.
Where there's a yoga studio upstairs.
Yep.
So they had that top floor, and they ended up splitting half of it with a yoga studio, that's still there today. And that was the first yoga studio in Melbourne back then.
Wow.
That was one of the most progressive, little studios back then. And the toilet block across the road was famous. It was the worst spot in Melbourne. It was the one where everyone would go and get high. So it was quite a rough. Smith Street was quite a rough spot, and that's where they started. But throughout that time, he's worked in insurance, and so has my mum as well. But they've always done different things. My dad's done a few different import-export businesses, property. My mum's actually a great entrepreneur. Like, she's the sleeper in that relationship, because she went and did her thing. She went and decided, well, I want to be a dressmaker. So she has this amazing ability to never fear going back to basics and knowing nothing. That is a skill in itself. So she's like, I'm going to enroll in Box Hill TAFE and learn how to be a dressmaker. Spend her time doing that, then went and volunteered for somebody to go and work with them, and just eventually kept building her skills, and now she's amazing. She decided to open a shoe store, so flew to Milan, found one of the those sort of what are they called, trade shows?
Okay, yeah.
Started importing shoes, opened up a shoe store in Chapel Street. She's just got no fear. So I guess that culture's kind of been built in a little bit.
Okay.
And if I have to reflect and post-rationalize, I reckon that this sense of no fear, or the fear of failure, is not really a thing. Is probably the one thing that they've distilled in me.
So what do you think are the other drivers of you jumping into being an entrepreneur as well? If parents one side, upbringing one side, was it something else that was innate in you that that caused you to want to be an entrepreneur? You've started a few things, and we'll jump into it. But yeah, what will you attribute to that entrepreneurial spirit in yourself?
I mean, it sounds like you want a highbrow answer, and I don't have one. I've only got
fine.
lowbrow
Yeah.
stuff.
No, lowbrow is great.
My past has been riddled with these moments of like, I've got an idea, we should do this and we should do that. And anybody who's worked with me in the past knows that every few months there's another idea that, oh, wouldn't it be good if we just did a bit of this. You know, it's quite a fun way to live, and maybe you can bring it back to a lack of focus and concentration. You're always jumping to the next thing.
Yeah.
But I've always had a lot of fun with it, and I guess it. You know what it is? Actually, you know what it is? It's creative problem solving. That's essentially what entrepreneurship is. You see it as a challenge. It's not about the money, and it's not about the work-life balance. That's for sure. It is all about how can I creatively solve this problem, and a lot of the time is through business. A lot of the time is by starting this, spending the time, committing to fixing that problem, and then following it out to its nature of you either solved it or you didn't solve it. Right?
Sure.
I actually think that's what it comes down to: problem solving.
So, what was the first ever company you started? The first ever business?
I think it was a consultancy. I think it was a social media consultancy.
Right. Was this DDAS?
Yeah, I mean, you've looked through LinkedIn.
Yeah,
and you've seen
I've
some
done a bit
stuff.
of digital stalking.
Yeah.
Thanks, our producer Joe as well.
There's some stuff in there. I mean, essentially, what I did, one of the first ones out of uni. Actually, what had happened was I'd finished uni and I applied to get a job at Xbox.
Oh, cool.
And so I went through the interview process, and I failed miserably. And it was my first lesson in sales, because they asked us to sell a fictional product. They gave us this product and they said, you know, tell us how you'd sell this. And, you know, I was quite a confident and arrogant young man. I was like, well, it's got this, it's got that, it's got all the bells and whistles. And I spent around 5 minutes talking about this product. And I failed. And they said, yep, thank you. No, thank you. Here's your letter. It's like, you got to give me some feedback.
Sure.
What did I do wrong? And they said, you didn't ask us anything. You know, in order to sell something, you need to know what the problem is. And you need to talk to the person you're selling to. And the more that they're talking, the better the sales process is going. And she said, you didn't ask us anything at all. And from there, that was a big lesson for me in sales and essentially how to do business. I still remember to this day. So what I did from there was, I said, I'm not going to go and keep applying for jobs now. I want to start my own little thing. And I felt like back in the day I was quite tech progressive. Do you remember Tumblr?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Tumblr. Pre Verizon, was it? Or
Oh, yeah. We're talking
Yahoo.
early days.
Yeah,
Yahoo.
geez,
I think it was Yahoo. Very early days Tumblr,
Yeah.
right? Tumblr back in the day was super progressive.
Yeah.
It was a very cool platform. But what made it actually quite easy to use was its backend. Its CMS was actually really, really clean and lovely. It's basically 5 things to pick from. You're posting a photo, you're posting a video. The UX in posting wasn't like that ever before Tumblr.
Yep.
So what I would do is I would set up websites for small businesses using Tumblr as the platform, and obviously the Tumblr app as the CMS.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to approach it.
Yeah, because small business owners don't actually know how to update a website.
Right.
So once it's built, you want to make the blogging platform feel like a website format with constant updates that they could do themselves. That was my first startup, my first business.
And was it successful?
Yeah, I mean, I made some money out of it,
Yep,
but
yep.
At the end of the day, you know, it's when you're fresh out of uni and have got no idea what you're doing. The sales process is always the hardest, right? Like finding new clients and filling the funnel and building it out. So eventually, I ended up shutting that down, and then getting a full-time job.
Okay.
I think that I got the full-time job first, more than I shut it down. You know, it was more the fact that I ended up starting working somewhere else.
Okay, so that was DT that you worked at, and somewhere in between you started 3000 Thieves, which is apparently Australia's largest online coffee retailer.
Apparently, you know, numbers pending.
Numbers pending. But what was the story behind 3000 Thieves, and how'd you start that up?
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because I'd started at DT, and DT was amazing. Some great people have come out of DT, and they're actually quite entrepreneurial themselves as a business. So they supported fresh ideas. They supported this kind of creative thinking, creative problem solving. We'd started in the strategy team. You end up pitching this work, right? That doesn't always get through. You think the ideas are great, but often, it's up to the client. You probably got a 5% strike rate for a lot of the ideas to go through to their final realization. We found ourselves selling things and promoting things that we probably tangibly hadn't actually done ourselves. So we started businesses. We started these little concepts, these little ideas within the strategy team to see if we could actually action some of the things we were talking about. And I had started 3,000 Thieves as a coffee subscription to test things like subscription payments, e-commerce, shipping out things. Started off as a test, just a small experiment. And it grew naturally. It was a full organic growth business. I didn't spend a cent on ads. Maybe like a little bit of promoted posts back in the day,
right?
Like $10 tops. Like really, like not that much. It was 100%. I mean, it was a slow growth, but organic nonetheless. And so we'd started this business, just kept growing and growing, and eventually we had to make a judgment call. I had to make a judgment call and say, well, is this something I want to focus on, or is it time to drop? When you start any side business, any side hustle, there's this culture of promoting. You need to be doing side hustles. You need to be hustling. Do whatever you can, right?
Yeah.
But if your side hustle is any good, your primary job, your primary source of income is going to suffer.
It's true.
Something has to give. So a lot of people don't realize that when they're doing side hustles, if they're actively doing 10 other things, those 9 things are probably not doing very well.
It's about focus.
It's about focus to a degree, right? If you're doing it for a handover in the future, then that's what you want. That's the goal. But if you're constantly always keeping this thing on the side, then it's either not growing, or it will grow, and your primary job you'll get shit at. So I was getting shit at my job.
Okay. So
essentially.
So then you made the call to shut down 3,000 Thieves, or is it still running?
No, it's still running. No, 3,000 is still running. It still does phenomenally well.
Yep.
It continues to grow. It's a great business, and it's a great business because it solves a problem.
Yeah.
Not to pitch too much about 3,000 Thieves, but it solves a problem that there's new coffee roasters every day, and most people don't get exposure to it. Most people don't. They only get coffee from either near home or near work. There's a lot of great roasters out there. There's a lot of great coffee out there. All we are is a platform for these roasters to get out there and get their name out there. It was a real problem. Okay. So it helped. That's where the growth has come from.
Yeah.
The roasters can't get enough of us because they just need to get out. Need to get their name out there because they've only got their small communities around them.
And Melbourne's a great place to do it. Everyone here loves coffee.
Everyone in Melbourne, everyone in Australia, everyone in the world knows Melbourne for their coffee. So it was a great thing to run, and I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of support from Australia Post.
Awesome.
We grew phenomenally. It was a lovely business.
Okay,
it's a really cut my teeth into a startup where there was 100% bootstrapped, 100% owned by me. We sort of organic growth, subscription. Like everything was just great about that. When you talk about the metrics of that business were phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah, they were really, really good.
So why July then? What was the catalyst behind starting, your current venture, July?
So, I mean, what ended up happening was a few other things in between that. I started a series of co-working offices as well. Called Neighborhood, which was fantastic too. It was a great way to connect with other creative people, and we actually just really loved the warehouses that we built. It was actually more the fact that we wanted to live in these warehouses. We couldn't afford the rent, so we're like, well, why don't we spend our days here by turning into co-working offices?
Creative problem solving. There you go.
That was exactly it. I genuinely, I'm not just saying that. Genuinely, Adam Morris from Studio Today or Today Design I was doing a bit of work with him, and I said to him, Adam, if you ever leave this building, this is at 4 Brunswick Place. If you ever leave this building, please let me know. I would love to live here. And he kept his word. He was like, look, we're going to move to a bigger place. Do you want it? I said, yeah, for sure. Of course I want this place. And then I saw the rent bill. I saw the heating bill. You know, if you want to heat a double-story warehouse, oh my God, man.
Well, not a lot of insulation in that place.
There's not a lot of insulation, but there's a lot of cash just seeping through those windows.
Oh yeah.
I was working with my partner Steve at the time, we were working together on a consultancy, on a strategy consultancy. We'd actually gone to WeWork to have a look at some offices. And we weren't that impressed. We did the hard hat tour. They showed us the box that we were going to get for $3,500 a month, and we're like, this is ridiculous. There's no way that people are paying this. We can do this better. And so it started off as a bit of a creative problem for ourselves in terms of where we were going to house this consultancy.
Yep.
But the deeper we got into co-working, the more we realized that, well, you can't just do one. You have to do more, and you have to become a thing. And what are you going to stand for? You know, as we were talking about offline before, what is the focus of the business and the co-working? Co-working particularly needs a niche.
Absolutely.
For us, it was the fact that if you've ever worked in more creative co-work offices, you always walk in with neon signs telling you to hustle more.
It's true. Yeah, I can see it in my head.
Yeah, and a ping pong. There's always a ping pong table. You know, if you sit next to a ping pong table and you don't play ping pong, nothing can drive you more crazy than the constant sound of a plastic ball hitting the table. It is mind breaking. So we started it. We made a clear rule: no neons, and no table tennis tables. And we maintain this library style quietness to a space to allow creatives, particularly creatives who are introverts, who just need a place to think. That was how we positioned ourselves, and we ended up getting quite a lot of love from it. We ended up getting quite a few people. Yep. We got a lot of people from Creative Cubes in the Commons, or anyone who sat near the table tennis tables. It was like a great positioning statement.
You found your niche.
We found our niche. No table sports.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So I'd come to meet Richard, my business partner for July, during this stage. Because both of the co-work spaces are in Fitzroy, and so only a block away from this absolutely lovely coffee shop called A Coffee, and that's where we used to spend the majority of our time.
Okay.
And so I would bump into this guy, and when you always see the same person over and over again, you end up chatting.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite cafe around here? Is it the same around here?
Patricia Coffee, just around the corner. Yeah.
Patricia's a great one.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you tend to know people. You tend to know the regulars, and I know BW there from A Coffee, and I know all the guys there. Because of 3,000 Thieves, right? So, it was a lovely place, and as I came to know Richard, he was this other guy that I don't really know. I don't know how to associate with. He's like a super numbers driven, very methodical, brilliant genius guy, right? Definitely not me in that sense, But this guy's like just on the spectrum, smart, and knows how to manufacture, knows supply chain stuff. All this stuff I had no idea about, especially performance marketing as well. So it was kind of like a hybrid, our hybrid area. If you think of us as Venn diagrams, performance marketing is like this middle bit where it's about marketing, but it's also really numbers driven and metrics driven, which I never cared too much about.
Right.
I was like, don't worry, if the creative's good and the product's good, they'll eventually they'll come. Yeah. It's slower, but we'll get there. So we would chat about these things where I would be like, can you tell me some performance stuff? Like, how would I structure this performance campaign for Neighborhood in 3000? How would I do this? How would I do that? Our supply chain, I'm thinking about getting this manufactured. We'd talk about things. And in turn, he'd be like, well, he was working at, or he'd founded Brosa at the time. And Brosa, again, super successful furniture business.
Yep.
But back then, the issues they were having were brand. Performance was getting way too expensive because most of their traffic and most of their sales were coming from stealing traffic from people who were looking for other bits of furniture.
Right. Away from IKEA and
whatever. Yeah, exactly. You're looking for a coffee table, they just try and sneak you in, but there was no brand recognition. They weren't getting any of the organic.
Sure.
And the performance was suffering because people weren't recalling Brosa by brand.
Gotcha.
So there was this. He's like, how do we build this? How, you know, we were talking about like inspiration, top of funnel stuff. You know, what else could you be doing at Bro? So like, you guys need to be doing catalogs and photo shoots. You know, you guys really need to be part of that inspiration process, and you need to start making furniture that nobody else is making. Like, you need product designers. You need to really be at that.
You gotta be known for something.
You got to be known for something, right? So, you know, anyway, whether they did or they didn't, it doesn't really matter, right? This was the sort of conversations that we'd have.
Interesting.
Over coffee, right? It is, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, you know, it's an hour, 2 hours gone, and then you're like, oh wow, I feel like I've learned something. That's great.
So you clicked instantly with Richard.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so we got along great. You know, very much a yin yang type of relationship. So and so, you know, it just so happened, like, again, creative problem solving, as we sort of describing it now. We were looking at the direct-to-consumer space in Australia and sort of seeing that it's not really a thing here. You know, you definitely see it in the US. People understand it in the US.
True.
In Asia, almost completely not. In Europe, a little bit. But in Australia, direct-to-consumer, people typically think of it as online only.
Yeah, gotcha. And you've only got a couple of brands in there, like Koala or, I don't know, sleeping, like mattresses seem to be pretty popular. But
can you name me another one that's not a mattress?
Ooh, July.
Yeah. Hey, 2 years ago? Yeah. It's a tough game, right?
It is really tough. Yeah, yeah.
So direct to consumer was just this. It's a great business model.
Yep.
And it's a business model that we've only been able to afford to do now because the struggle, the difficulty, the barriers in manufacturing and bringing product over and then marketing that same product have reduced significantly. It's I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's a lot easier to do it now than it was. So we found ourselves in admiration of the direct to consumer space, and then thought, well, how can we? Let's look at some broken industries in Australia, New Zealand, sort of. Typically, what ends up happening is that you have these absolutely massive dominant players who have just been the established incumbents for so long. There's actually lots of opportunity to innovate. I think the Iconic did it quite well in like trumping Maya and David Jones. You know, you get these brands with like there's one or two big players, and at Kogan again with Harvey Norman.
It's true, yeah.
So we're looking at the Australian landscape and going, what's broken here? And we came to understand that the luggage industry and the bag industry is pretty much dominated by one player. And it's a player that's been around for a long time. They have a multi-brand strategy that they roll out, so you think that you're buying other people's brands. And we thought, well, okay, you know, in order to tackle this beast, what we need is we actually need a really strong product manufacturing supply chain front, and we need a really strong marketing front heavy campaigning front. We need the brand to resonate. This is, you know, luggage is not something people think about too often.
True. You
really need to break through and become an interesting brand. You know, no such thing as boring categories, only boring brands. So we thought we can break through. We don't want to be a koala in the sense where there's this sense of irreverence and jokey and Australianness.
Right. With the IKEA, anti-IKEA ads and all that kind of
exactly.
stuff.
They've done great for their category, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't want to go down that path for this. So we made a commitment. We said we're going to keep this as a premium brand, and we're going to focus on the direct-to-consumer narrative, so that hopefully we can try and educate the Australian audience to understand what we're trying to do. And so that's how it started. We're like, okay, well, we should do some luggage. This is great, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, we got excited about it. We started drawing things. We started researching things, and you know, the biggest thing that we did is just read reviews.
Yep.
It's like the most free research you could ever get, and most people ignore them. If you read every review out there, they're available. It's crazy how much people ignore reviews.
Okay.
So we read almost every review we could, and that was the basis that set the framework for our product design brief.
Yep. So you then registered the business on the 7th of July, 2018, I think.
You've really done your research. What's on those notes?
We did a lot of stalking.
Wow,
beforehand.
that's pretty good. So what had happened was, it was late June when we were registering. When we were like, this is the name. This is what we're gonna. You know, we love this idea of July being a great time of year to travel and a great time of year to go overseas. And Aussies and Kiwis love traveling in July. So we're like, this is it. July's great. Nobody's got the handles, which is fantastic. Let's register. And actually, Richard, in his wisdom, was just like, let's wait until the 7th. So we waited a week to make sure that we could get 7 of the 7. You know, quite an auspicious kind of numbering.
True, yeah.
You know, and it's nice. It's a week difference, you know, but it's a nice little story.
Yeah.
We were sitting there ready to do it. We were going to execute on all things. It's like, just let's wait a week.
Just hoping no one else registers the name in the meantime.
That's the funniest thing, right? When you've got this idea, you need to get it done now. It's like domain names. You're like, if I don't buy it right now, for sure someone's coming in a week and buying this thing.
And just rename it August and go 0808 or something.
There's somebody at GoDaddy just looking at all the searches that nobody purchases, and they're like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna take that one.
So registered 7th of July and officially launched in February 2019. Couple of months in between. What happened then to help you start up the business? Did you source manufacturers in the meantime, or? So from July to Feb, you mean?
Yeah. So I mean, so many things, right? So what do we start with? I mean, we started with the design stuff, and because once you've got the design, only then do you start going to manufacturers. We got the design. John from One Design Office helped us out as an industrial designer there.
Okay.
You know, sort of taking the points that we wanted to focus on and realizing them, you know, in a beautiful design. And then we went to China and started looking for manufacturers.
Okay.
It's definitely Richard's forte. And the biggest thing that we'd found was that, you know, you're coming up against large players with large volumes. That was our biggest challenge, is that we're finding suppliers that would believe in us. And one of the key things I've actually learnt from Richard is that not every factory will do everything just because you've got an order. You have to build the relationships with factories. You have to build the relationships with manufacturers. And they've got to believe in your vision for growth. Because if they don't, they may just get the job done. But that's where you start to suffer quality issues. It's where you start to, you know, somebody else comes along with a bigger order, you lose a production time slot.
Right.
You really have to build the relationships with them. So a lot of people, especially Australians, love to think they can go to China and just jump around different factories and just whatever the cheapest price is, they'll do that. What I've come to learn is that the better way to do it is to find manufacturing partners that believe in the growth path, that believe in the brand, and will then sit with you and work out the next 12 to 24 month schedule, lock in those slots, lock in quality control measures, and you really start to, you know, these are people that you start to spend some serious time with. So that's what we did. We began that journey, you know, and you're finding people who are like, well, we work with X company, so we can't do this, or we work with these guys. And so you really get blocked because you don't know what your initial order is.
Right.
You know, physical product is another world.
Yeah.
But you have to commit to a container or two.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of direct-to-consumer companies start by doing Kickstarter campaigns to raise the initial funds to then sink into the initial stock or whatever it is. But you guys didn't do that. You sort of just popped up one day with like, hey, this is our website.
We got stuff now.
We got stuff, yeah. How'd you do that?
Well, you know, Kickstarter, if you've been on Kickstarter lately, it's all bags. I don't know if it's just because I get retargeted the bags because I'm in the game, but there's so many Kickstarter bags. There are backpacks, there's this, is that, you know, and some of them are really great. There's a couple of US brands that do really, really well. But outside of that, everybody's just seen what's going on. They're like, well, we'll do a bag now. And no one has any product. It's all just renders and marketing pitches to get the early funds. We didn't want to. The Kickstarter audience is quite male heavy and techie, and we didn't particularly want to brand ourselves as a Kickstarter brand. So that was a first judgment call we made that hurt us a bit as well, you know, because we didn't get the money up front.
Right.
So once we had we made that judgment call. Once we had our product and a bit of progress, the container got delayed, so we missed the Christmas drop.
Ouch, yep.
So that we knew it was coming in February, but what we did, we were able to get leather tags, and so we offered free personalized leather tags in December for anybody who pre-ordered a suitcase.
Interesting.
And beautiful. We boxed them up so nicely, and we personalized them ourselves.
Yep.
We bought a leather stamper. You know, we went all out.
Yep.
But it was literally Richard and I in neighborhood in those days.
Just the two of you.
Just the two of us, just like stamping. You know, we got so good at stamping leather tags.
The unglamorous side of
exactly. And everyone's like, great, free and it got us our first container, you know, it like sold, which was great. It was our own little like pre-sale moment. But somebody has to stamp those tags, right?
And what was marketing like in the early days? Because no one, like, I'm guessing when you launched, no one knew who July was and, you know, what you guys did. So how did you reach your initial customers?
A lot of it was an organic push with friends and family. You know, sometimes it's a particular category and product that is interesting that people just don't realize is that you're talking about. You're talking about starting a luggage company. It's quite a strange thing, and I feel like our networks are maybe big enough.
Right.
That got us over the line. But we had some early press as well, which was great. So it ended up being just this lovely organic push. I can't attribute it to any one thing.
Yeah, okay. And what do you think led to that organic success? Was it the fact that you had a good brand or an interesting story behind it, the two founders, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the brand guy, so I'm definitely going to say it was the brand.
Yeah. It was all you.
It was nothing to do with the product. You know, there's a lot of, I think that you can attribute it to a lot of different things. I always talk about the importance of having a strong social handle. By having a strong social handle, you justify your existence being there. You justify why you are there, why you exist, and it's a shortcut to a trust to a trust profile. So, you know, you're seeing this brand now, and you see, you know, XYZ_official. And you're like, okay, you know, it doesn't click straight away. But if you say something like, I noticed when I saw Seed, you know, that's been promoting lately, which is like a probiotic tablet thing. Yeah, right. I was just like, oh yeah, cool. The packaging looks cool, but at Seed, I was like, oh well, that's interesting. It says really small in this sort of day and age now. Like the domain name isn't as important as the handles. Yep. And I find like just by saying such a handle, you automatically shortcut us into the trust group. You're like, okay, right, these are not, you know, just some Kickstarter brand. That's right. Yeah, these guys must be here for a reason. Yep.
And at some point, you changed your URL from getjuly.com to july.com.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes it's nice to also have the domain name as well.
That's a pretty cool URL. How'd you get that?
Yeah, I mean, so we were trying to figure out what to get. You know, obviously we couldn't get July.com early days, right? Because we didn't have any cash, and so the conversation was like, well, if it's good enough for Dropbox, it's good enough for us, right? So Dropbox used to have getdropbox.com. Right. We're like, if it's good for them, it's good for us. Let's just get July, and it's quite a nice, like, you know, app call to action.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and it's a consumer trust because you go to July.com, it's kind of like it seems like you're not an incumbent, but like a reputable.
That's right.
Brand, established brand.
That's right. Yeah. So look, later on, you know, we had the opportunity to buy it, and we did. Yep. You know, it was after our funding, after everything else. We're like, well, you know, now it's time to escalate it a bit. Yep. It actually helps from a global standpoint too. So we were like, it's time, and it's a cool email. It's really nice to have a July.com email.
It is. Yeah. July is really interesting because you seem to defy what people think about direct-to-consumer and what to do with direct-to-consumer. And I'll jump into another example. You opened a retail store in Emporium before you even raised a single dollar from any external investors. Like, I could be wrong.
We had an angel investment.
Yep. But before you raised any large sums of money, which is quite different to what a lot of the other kind of direct-to-consumer companies do, which is limited or no physical store. What was the decision behind that to open an Emporium of all places? Because I'm guessing it's not cheap to rent space in Emporium.
Yeah,
either.
We're crazy. That's half of it. You know? It comes down to if you understand your audience and your product genuinely and are committed to going, we'll do what it takes to make sure that we can live up to our promise and we live up to the standard that we're trying to achieve. There is no other answer than opening physical retail. We are talking now, we're a travel company selling luggage for people who are leaving. And a lot of people are leaving the next day. Whatever the day is, a lot of people leave the next day.
Yep.
There is just some things, especially in Australia, you can't achieve just on e-commerce. So it is a commercial opportunity. It wasn't just a branding exercise. It was a commercial opportunity to open up a physical retail store because we knew that there was an audience there who are just constantly looking at their watches going, I've got to go.
Yep.
Can you get me something right now? So even 4-hour delivery, like it's something that we see even over Christmas. In the last, Christmas is huge, but in the last 3 days leading to before Christmas Day, online drops completely.
Interesting.
Because there is just no trust in the shipping.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, in the shipping side of things. When will it? Ozpost, couriers, who knows what's going to happen? Australia doesn't have that confidence yet that it will arrive when it says it's going to arrive.
Right.
So there's something magical about a physical store. I don't know what you like with your Christmas shopping, right? But there's
super last minute.
Super last minute, right? So Chadstone, 24 hours. I'm leaving there with all the stuff.
True.
So there are just some things that are inherent there. They may be a bit old school, but you have that belief, that trust that I can solve my problem instantly just by going. And so we started looking, and we got very lucky with the spot that we got. And we want to roll out a lot more, just because it is that opportunity to experience the product. There's all these beautiful brand things, right, where you can touch it, you can see it. Yeah. We run events there. People love going to the store, but the reality of the situation is people just want to leave with products.
Yep.
And we ship for free anywhere that they want to from the store,
regardless of order size.
If they, because we have free shipping Singapore, New Zealand, China, Hong Kong. They can buy an entire set and not have to take it from the store, and we ship it there. We'll ship it same day if they're in Melbourne, but nobody does. Nobody wants to. They all want to leave with the product because they're all leaving.
They want to feel it, they don't want to touch it. And
that's right.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. So I think the other thing that the retail store has done for you guys, and this might be a bit of an embellishment by media or whatever it is, but apparently when you closed your 10.5 million round, it was because the CEO of Strand Bags happened to be walking by and ran into your store and kind of went, "Oh, this is interesting," and these guys look like disruptors.
It was after. No, it was more. That wasn't the beginning of the conversation.
Okay, gotcha.
That was more towards the end.
So what was the start like? What was the beginning?
The start was quite funny. So we our social media strategy is like, if you're a little bit of a hater, we just block you. We just block you straight out. Okay. Like, ain't nobody got time to listen to haters talk, well, that's the blue's not the right blue. Like, we don't care. Like, we're doing our thing, and, you're either on the journey with us or you're not. We don't have time for it. So, if it's a complaint or things like that, it's a different issue. But we're talking about haters who just see an ad and they just feel like complaining for the sake of it. So we don't have time for it. So we block them. What we at those early stages, we were sort of looking at everybody who was interacting with the brand on social, and we sort of just jumped a couple of profiles in to see who they were, and we noticed, or somebody had reached out over messages, over DM, Instagram DM, and it was Felicity, who's the GM at or MD at Strand Bags, and we're like, oh, this person's definitely a competitor. Yep. Like they're just sussing us out.
Right.
Block. Just straight up blocked her. And she got upset, So she jumped on Facebook Messenger and messaged the page, and she's like, I think you blocked me on Instagram. I just wanted to have a chat with you guys, and people were like, oh, this sounds dodgy. Yeah. Okay, we'll have that coffee with you. And we ended up having a coffee with her, and Felicity was amazing. She's a rock star in retail. I don't know if you've done the research on her at all, but she was CEO of Suzanne Group. Then moved over to be VP of marketing for Gap in North America. Wow. Came back, and she took the Cotton On Group global. Yep. And is now here to grow Strand Bags. Right. Wow. So she's like a year in the job at Strand Bags, and there to grow and turn it into a big, even more of a bigger business. So she's a retail weapon, and she's having coffee with us. We probably caught up 3 or 4 times, and basically she just was downloading and telling us what to do, and you should do this. Have you thought about this? It was like the most help we'd ever had in a retail perspective. So she was helping us way before there was ever talk about investment or anything like that. She was just happy to see something happening. And then it started turning into a bigger conversation. She'd seen the retail store, loved what we were doing. And then from a math perspective, she couldn't believe that of the numbers we were doing from the retail store, because typically, there's in retail, there's X footprint, should bring Y dollars, but she was like, oh, you guys are doing great. What a beautiful store, let's keep chatting.
Okay.
And that's how that started.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they definitely love the store, and they're
Yep,
definitely
yep.
impressed by how we run it and the numbers that we run it by.
Yep.
Because we're profitable. It's a great marketing experience. People love the product. But yeah, at the same time, the numbers work too.
Was it a massive process to secure that 10.5 mil in investment?
Yeah.
What was involved? What was it like for you?
It was big. I mean, before that, we were very lucky. We'd raised $1 million in angel
Yep.
leading up to it. So that's almost like our Kickstarter pre, right? We had a couple of guys who believed in us, saw the pathway, particularly the first 250 grand. That was essentially a check without too much knowledge. We had nothing at that stage. He gave us the 250 and he said, I'll see you in a year. Which is crazy.
Trust.
It's great. We didn't even sign any paperwork.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It was really,
Wow.
really, really crazy. But we appreciate it. And so we grew from that. And what was the question again? What am I answering?
What was the process to get to
The
the
process to
10.5?
the raising.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. I was just thinking about that process. I'm like, that was bloody crazy. So we did that, and we grew quite well. And actually, the contact came. Obviously Felicity reached out, and there's another private family office that also followed in that round as well. So the full amount wasn't just done by Strandbags. So we had these two big players coming to the table with us and saying, we want in. And it was a lot of late nights and just figuring out process and detail and, it can be big, but it was actually a really good, really good juxtaposition between the two types of investor. Right, so a lot of people think you just raise and then you do all the paperwork and it kind of just flows through. But what we'd found is that the family office was quite different to the to Strandbags. Strandbags were in literally the game. They knew luggage, they knew retail, they were active players. Whereas family office were looking at it from a pure investment standpoint. So the due diligence and the questions that were being asked on both sides were very, very different.
Interesting.
So the Strandbags guys really understood the product. They understood the kind of capital outlay you needed for stock and where the efficiencies lie in shipping and how you would market X, and they knew all those details. Whereas a straight up investor is more looking like, well, what's happening in 5 years? How do we grow from here? What are the market? It's just very different.
Right.
So it was interesting nonetheless, but we were very lucky to have so many interested parties. We'd definitely done the rounds, right? We definitely early stages.
Yep.
When we were just growing, we probably just launched the product. We went to one of those startup dinners.
Oh yeah. Like a pitch kind of thing.
No, it was no pitching. It was like I think it was one of those ones. Adam Schwab from Luxury Escapes hosts these dinners with some great business people around from Melbourne and Sydney. And we were lucky enough to go, and nobody really wanted to have a bar of it. I remember we spoke to a couple of like VCs. One VC in particular, I remember, was like, after we pitched, he's like, you should, for us, you should go and speak to the Meyer family, like retail. You need some retail. And so, I just remember it's a classic example of just getting rejected nonstop until you actually hit the right one. And which I think is part of the journey. I think it's very rare to, it's easy to say, yeah, great, hey, Strandbags reached out on Instagram and look, they've invested. How fun is this?
Yeah.
The reality is we'd actually pitched so many times before that and just got knocked back. It wasn't, it's not a SaaS product. And a lot of VCs don't get physical retail.
That's true.
This is hardware, and it's a weird thing for VCs to want to get involved in.
So if you could encapsulate your entire fundraising experience, do you have just one piece of advice for startups who are going through that journey? What would that advice be?
Keep at it. But I think the biggest thing is that you've got to believe in what you're doing and believe in the product, and not just a false sense of faith. You need to back up your beliefs with either with existing products that are replicating that growth. You need to prove as much as you can to yourself, not just to the investors, that that this is a product that's going to work. This is a business that's going to work, and importantly, you're the team to make it work.
Sure.
That was probably the biggest thing. It's not about suitcases.
Yep.
It was
a team.
It was about the team. It was about the ability of Richard and I to be able to convince somebody to say, we are the right people. We're taking this. We're working full time on this. That was probably the biggest thing, right? Is that everyone thinks that they can do it part time for a little bit until they figure it out. You've got to be all in and arguably not make any income for a year or so until this thing takes off.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how has the company changed with the funding now? How do you plan on spending that capital or growing your team or expanding?
We've spent it all.
It's Series B next year.
It's all gone. Yeah. That Ferrari at the front. That we no. It's we don't want to raise again. I mean, this is probably the biggest thing. I'll get to the question on how we're going to spend the money in a second, but we don't want to raise again. And this is the difference between, I would say, super high growth American VC backed companies who are growth at any cost, compared to more conservative Australian and more of a European style growth path, where you need the funds to get to a certain point, but you are actually gearing towards being a profitable business in a very short amount of time. So that is the pathway that we are choosing to take, that we want to take. We don't want to continue to over-dilute ourselves in order to gain X market share and to raise $100 million or so. The idea is that within a couple of years, we are actually a very profitable business and that we can grow from our own profitability.
Okay.
How are we spending the money? The main thing is product, right? When you're dealing with a product-based business, you are constantly needing more product development. You need to be shipping products, and it takes money, it takes time.
Yep, and growing retail presences and all that as well.
Retail's expensive.
Yep.
Retail is so expensive.
Yep.
Startup guys and tech guys and, even fintech guys that, and even myself, I had no idea how expensive retail is.
Right.
Retail is another world.
It's bank guarantees, it's the term deposits, it's the fit out costs. And
it's everything. You need to be, again, we're doing quite well with our one, and we got extremely lucky with everything and how that all worked out. But a lot of I can see how retail is struggling. Landlords in particular just continually up the rents.
Yep.
I can see how it would be difficult. However, once those rents come back down again, I think physical retail is going to be revitalized, and it is a thing that most brands will end up getting into.
Right.
It is only the rental that's stopping them from creating amazing brand experiences, physical brand experiences. We're going to see this world. Actually, there's a brand that does really well, but we're going to see this world where, when e-commerce is cheap and everybody can do it now, and it's never been easier to ship things online, only offline will be the differentiators.
Interesting.
So Porter bags in Japan is a really good example of that. You can buy Porter bags from certain places all over the world, and you can buy them online too. But only in their Tokyo store in Japan will they have this completely different range. And it's only if you go there and only if you speak to them and they give you the full treatment, and it's amazing.
Right.
It is absolutely amazing. But it's one of those, it's a conscious choice they made.
Yep.
They're not going to distribute them, and they're not going to sell them online.
Yep.
It's only when you come to the store.
Sort of like going full circle. Even Amazon opened a bookstore like a couple of years ago, didn't they? Which is
Yeah,
quite
that's
ironic because their whole mission is to disrupt bookstores to start with. So, or it was at least back in the day.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're physical beings.
Yeah.
And we need to spend our time somewhere. So sometimes it's nice to walk around and be inspired by things, but be inspired by the world.
Yep.
That's really what physical retail is about.
Absolutely. Maybe just one more question before we wrap up the podcast. And this is really interesting. How do you live alongside Strand Bags? Because they're an incumbent in the industry, investing in someone who's trying to disrupt their core business. Like, what is it like living alongside an investor who's competitive?
Part of the deal was that we don't distribute ever. We don't ever connect on a commercial level like that at all, because we're totally different businesses. Their insights into the luggage world are great, because they really do understand good luggage from bad luggage, what the category does, the ups and downs of the category, the cycles. And the main thing is that they've got 300 retail stores. They know physical retail more than anybody else. It is great to have those insights, and when you actually from a advice standpoint and a learning that I had for myself and for Richard as well is that actually not all money is the same. Finding funding from industry partners versus straight VCs is actually super beneficial. You get the 1 + 1 = 3 outcome. You get the money, but you get the guidance on how to spend it right. Some learnings. You know, if there's a dip in January because nobody's buying luggage because they're already on holidays, it's understood and accepted. It's actually forecasted because they've given you the insight of the trends. Actually, industry partner funding has been a fantastic part of the growth plan for July.
Okay. So it's more complementary than anything, and it's
definitely,
symbiotic relationship.
Completely, definitely. It's been great. I mean, you know, in anything you do, if somebody's already done something like that, you know, and they don't dictate, they just sort of say, well, that's interesting. You know, we would do this and we would do that, but it's totally up to you.
Sure.
That's a perfect relationship.
Okay.
You know, we really like that. Michael Lewis and Felicity. Michael Lewis owns Strandbags Group. And he's part of a global retail chain called the Fashini Group. You know, I've never met two people who've made themselves more available to us than these guys. Absolutely fantastic insights and assistance. And you know, we could have done it without them, but it's a lot better to do it with them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Athan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. If someone wanted to connect with you or learn more about July, what should they do?
Hit me up on Twitter. Twitter's the easiest, at ATH, ATH, and then July at JULY.
Where do you find all these awesome handles?
That's the dark places of the internet.
Thanks, Athan. Great
Thanks,
speaking
Jason.
to you.